Welcome to Kelly's Bar in Youngstown, Ohio. On Mahoning Avenue. This is Yards After Contact. Gary House alongside Ryan Kelly. Ryan, Holy War Week this week. Great opportunity to hear from both, a little bit of perspective from both sides of the coin here tonight. Also, I think we have JFK, Don Prologo's coming in, talking a little about his kids. We got a couple special guests here overall tonight. Ron Potesta, I happen to be on his show on the radio on Thursday nights, so it ought to be an interesting lineup tonight. Your big thoughts this week coming up, real quick. Big Mooney Urson week for you.
Well, when you play in that game and you're a part of it, you wake up Monday morning, even as a player or as a guy who's just owns a bar in Youngstown. Something's different that Monday morning when you wake up. So, yeah, it's a huge week for everybody. I'm excited. The show's going to be great because I see a couple great guys in the bar today talk about their perspective. I'm excited to hear from the Mooney side. You know, I know what it's like from the Ursuline side. I know some of these guys that hear from Ursuline, their perspective. I've either coached them or play with them, so it's great.
We got a special guest I see down at the end of the bar. Yeah. I think people will be excited to kind of hear his perspective. We'll kind of let you figure that out later in the show, but it's got to be special for you as a former player coach in this series, Mooney Ursuline. Real quick, what's it mean to you before we talk about it later on?
You know, it's so special. It's something that you can't even. You start going to the rally when you're a Catholic school kid in 6th grade, and it starts to build up. But when you're the guy, when you're walking through that tunnel and you're coming on the field, it's you can't describe it. You can't describe the build up, you know. And then you fast forward to as a coach. It's keeping everyone humble, but even as a coach, you can't keep everyone level because you want to go put a helmet on. That's the 1 week of the year when you start to reminisce and you want to go put a helmet on and you want to be a part of it. So it's the greatest week of anyone's life for 4 years. You can't describe it.
Ohio State, Michigan, at the high school level.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll get your perspective on that later in the show, at the end of the show.
Yeah.
What's going on at Kelly's Bar, how you're going to celebrate all that, and more. But first we're going to bring up Ron Potesta, some of the JFK, his coach, and a couple players he brought with him. And I think it's a good show. People will be interested to hear what some of the former Mooney Ursuline players have to say about
Yeah, I'm excited. You know, it's a great show. You're going to hear from some great guys. And I think Don Prologo, he's an Ursuline guy, but it takes an Ursuline guy to have a state championship defense out there. So I'm excited.
We'll pull that off at Kennedy.
Yeah.
He's a defensive coordinator.
Yep, absolutely.
We'll be back with more of our guests and lineup from Kelly's Bar on Mahoning Avenue in Youngstown, Ohio, with Yards After Contact. And welcome back to Kelly's Bar, Mahoning Avenue in Youngstown, Ohio. This is Yards After Contact. With me now, a special guest. Usually he's the one behind the radio dial interviewing me on Thursdays when we do our Buckeye edition. Ron Potesta, I guess you can call him one of the dean of the area radio.
Well, you're making me feel old
yes,
now.
well,
don't get it.
Claim
we
it.
are getting old.
Claim it, Ron, of course.
No doubt.
Of course, you have that Championship Indians jersey on today, so that's couldn't be a good situation for them and heading into the World Series now.
Man, that's fun. And anytime you can see your favorite team move on to the championship, it's a good time shared by one and all.
I say that, Ron, because you're a big baseball guy.
Amen.
Your roots are kind of in radio locally, but but you've had a nice little career. For those of you who might not know or follow him, first of all, he's a radio host, 3 to 6 on 1390, the Sports Animal, WNIO.
Yep.
I happen to be a guest on Thursdays from 5 to 6, so anytime you're in the radio or iHeartRadio.
iHeartRadio app if you have a smartphone. Yep.
Ron, a little bit about your background. Latonia High School, were you involved in athletics? How did you get going in radio, and how did your career take off?
Yeah, I wanted to be in radio forever. When I was, I think, 3rd grade was when I decided that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a sports broadcaster because I knew I wasn't going to be good enough athletically. I was so far behind with my friends and whatnot. And I knew pretty much, even though I tried playing baseball and football and basketball, I wasn't any good.
If
And
you
I knew
can't be
that.
an athlete, be an athletic supporter.
There you go. That's what that Larry
old-
Kemp says that every chance he gets. And if you ever talk with Coach Kemp, he'll tell you some great stories
Yes.
about my incredible, and I use that word sarcastically, athletic ability.
And he's been on the show here, but
Yeah.
yeah, he's a great guy. And
Oh
of
yeah,
course,
well he was an assistant coach to Artie Aldemore when I
Okay.
was at Leetonia. Probably our best
early
era
'80s.
of-
Can we say the early '80s?
early
Why
80s,
not?
best era of football that we ever had in Leetonia, no doubt.
Great. So what happened after high school? Did you get right into radio right away? Did you stumble into it? How did it happen?
Actually, I made the mistake, and I say this because I wasn't college material. I hate saying this, but I underachieved all through high school because
Academically.
Yeah, I underachieved because I knew. Here's the thing. It's when you know what you want to do for the rest of your life at such a young age. I've always said it's a blessing and a curse. The blessing is you don't have to deal with, when you're in high school trying to figure out, God, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? Hell, I got that all down pat. No big deal. The curse on this is, and I fell into it hook, line, and sinker. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that because I already know what I want to do with the rest of my life. And I had tunnel vision. And looking back on it, I wish, if there was one thing that I wish I would have taken my studies a lot more seriously in high school. As it turns out, I wasn't prepared for college, and I didn't do very well in college. Went to broadcasting school, aced it, went into radio, and went right immediately into radio.
And as you're proud to say, you have a face for radio. Anyway,
Exactly.
So it's a good fit for you.
I have a face for radio, and I am not afraid to admit that. Absolutely.
How did you get involved locally? I guess first was your first step in radio. Yes.
I was in Mercer, Pennsylvania at a contemporary Christian station for a few years, and it was different. And then I got into Youngstown, and I went on 1390 of all places. Now, back then,
Wow.
it was WFMJ, which was owned by the Vindicator and owned by, subsidiary of TV 21. And I did a college football scoreboard show, and I did a Sunday night show, and board worked for Steve Meckling and Dana Bolish. Take you way, way back in the Wayback Machine.
Was that on your
that.
smartphone at the time or no?
No. I wish we had a smartphone back then. That's for sure.
So what happened? How did you get involved into? I guess baseball was the next step once you landed locally and doing your own talk show for a while.
Yeah, it was in the '80s. I was doing stuff at WFMJ, and then when I left there, I went up to Warren at an oldie station at WRRO, and then Larry Ward, who now works with iHeartMedia in Youngstown doing sales, he became the general manager of the first all sports station. And he approached me and said, hey, we want you to host a radio show. We want you to do high school football, high school basketball, and high school baseball. All right, my first exposure doing high school sports. Let's have some fun with it. And we did it in the, I think, 93 through 95, 96. Went with a couple more stations in Youngstown, got to WKBN in 98. And then I decided that I wanted to try to get into minor league baseball, and that's, as luck would have it, I got into minor league baseball in some of the weirdest circumstances.
Tell us a little bit about that kind of career.
Well, I had gone 3 or 4 years trying to get into minor league baseball in the winter meetings. That's when the minors and the majors all get together, and jobs are plentiful, and you go and put in your resume and do all kinds of different things. And it didn't work out for me, and I had a time clock in my mind. Okay, if I don't have it by this time, I'm just going to scrap it and do full-time in Youngstown. And as it turns out, of all places, Lubbock, Texas, halfway through the 1998 season, their broadcaster got fired for saying something on the air that he shouldn't have. And a broadcaster who I went to the winter meetings with in New Orleans in December of 97 recommended me to finish out the season in Texas. And as it turns out, I did such a good job, they invited me back in 99 in another city because the team that I broadcast for folded. So in 99, I went to Abilene, Texas, And then after the '99 season, that team folded, and I thought to myself, all right, I got to get on solid ground here sooner or later. So ultimately, I did in Elmira, New York, for a couple of years, and then I got in the Dodger organization.
How long were you there? What other stops did you make along the way?
Yeah, I was in Elmira for a couple of years and broadcast 2 years with a independent league team there. And the manager and general manager of that team worked in the Dodger organization. He was a lifer in the Dodger organization. He was a player, coach, manager, and a scout. And when the Dodgers started rehiring people that they had gotten rid of when Rupert Murdoch bought the team, they decided, okay, let's bring this guy back. And when they brought him back, he knew of the job opening in the high A ball club in Vero Beach, and he pulled some strings because he lived in Vero in the off season, and I got the job as the Dodgers broadcaster in Vero Beach, Florida in 2002.
A long story short, any highlight in particular throughout your minor league career?
I'll give you the one highlight. Two highlights in Vero Beach, Florida. 2 weeks in, I get a phone call. I'm down in Vero Beach, and the season hasn't even come close to starting yet. I think it's November, and I'm not even working for the Dodgers. Technically, I'm working somewhere else. I just wanted to get out of Youngstown and get out of the cold weather and experience warm winters. So I get down to Vero Beach. Early December, I get a phone call from my friend John, who gave me this job. And John says, meet me over at the golf course. He says, we're going to be golfing with 2 other people. I'm like, all right. So I'm running a little bit late. Tell him that I'm going to meet him on the 3rd hole. So I get over on the 3rd hole, and he says, listen, he says, we're going to be golfing with some interesting people. He said, don't freak out. I look at him like, well, define interesting. He says, you'll find out. So this first guy, good friend of John's, shake his hand, said, how are you? Ron Potesta. Second guy, looks kind of familiar. Gets a little bit closer to me, and I'm thinking to myself, all right, I'm not going to be able to handle this very well. Guy comes up to me, about 6'4", I don't know, 200 pounds, looks at me, sticks his hand out and says, Ron, good to meet you. I've heard nothing but good things about you. Sandy Koufax.
Wow, nice.
Okay, yeah, let's have some fun. So we golfed for the rest of the day and had a little bit of fun. And then, I don't know, a couple of days before the season started in Vero Beach, Florida, Vin Scully had been down there.
Wow.
And I got maybe 2 minutes of Vin Scully's time, but that was cool enough for me.
That has to be a highlight of your career.
Oh
Vin
yeah, absolutely.
Scully.
And he was so good. He was so cordial and everything. It was just he said, "Look, welcome to the Dodger family. I hope that you have a really good season down here. Nothing but respect." It was very professional, very cordial. It was good. It was a great season. We had a bad team, but it was all kinds of fun down there.
Well, let's fast forward ahead. You're in Youngstown. You have your talk show. Good thing that how you got into that. I'm not. How did that happen?
You
for
know,
you?
Bill Kelly, when he was still employed by iHeartMedia, called me up out of the blue and said, we're really thinking about doing a sports show, a live sports show, afternoons on the Sports Animal 1390. Would you be interested? Yeah, I'll be interested. But I want to make sure it's a local show because, so many people are going to want to talk about national stuff. And that's not, if you've got a show in the Youngstown market, now some stories, yeah, you have to talk about it.
Cleveland, Pittsburgh, maybe.
Yeah, but that's part of the local. Yeah. That's part of the local stuff. I mean, if there's a story coming out from another part of the country that needs to be talked about, okay, that's great. But most of my show, and I take pride in this, most of my show is a local sports show, and we'll dive into things that not many sports shows will dive into. I just did the soccer tournaments and volleyball tournaments for this week. Is it going to be popular with some folks? I don't know if it will be, but it's a local show, and we have to give these athletes just as much time.
Well, I know one thing: you give your opinion whether it's popular or not, and you don't care if people like it or not.
I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. Look, I'm not paid. I'm not paid to sit back and be this yes man to everyone, and I don't want to be a yes man to everyone. I got an opinion. You have an opinion. Come on the show. Let's have some fun. I mean, it's at the end of the day. Look, Gary, you and I have disagreed on an awful lot of things involving Ohio State, but at the end of the day, we laugh about it at the end of the show because we're having a good time. It's two fans that are talking. You happen to be a Buckeye fan. I happen to be a fan of Notre Dame. But it's all good. At the end of the day, we still talk about everything, and and there's no grudges held. It's all good.
Great, and that just you have Ohio State, Notre Dame, a basketball show.
Sure.
You have a couple of local TV print guys.
Yeah,
you
we have the
whole
sports
gamut
editor.
of
We
guys.
have the sports editor from both the Vindicator and the Tribune Chronicle that come on my show. Dana Balish from TV 21. Allison from TV 27. He joins me as well. Steve Leslie comes on when we want to talk high school hoops. He comes on the show. It's a really good show from 3 to 6 as long as you put up with me. I mean, it's,
Yeah,
you know,
of course. You have to take the good with the bad.
you have to take the good with the bad. Exactly.
Well, now's a good time. The Tribe's winning. The Cavs are getting ready to go. But it's high school football season, week 9.
Yeah.
You know, good things are happening. It's crunch time, if you will.
Yep.
What do you like right now about high school football, and what's catching your eye in the area right now?
I'll tell you what, as far as I'm concerned, the computer rankings, it's the best system that we have in the country. I mean, I think it's the best because it's a perfect system in that if you're playing a bunch of teams that aren't doing well, you're not going to get rewarded. But if you're playing teams and you've beaten teams that have played well, you're going to get rewarded. And people complain about, well, we weren't good enough to be in the top 8. Well, hold on a second. If you're competing for that